So, should you go to art school? This is something I've been thinking about for a long time, and usually it's a pretty long answer, but I think I found the best concise answer to that question. And the best concise answer is this flowchart here. So this flowchart is made by Lauren Parent-Pinto from the Muddy Colors blog, which is a great resource. Basically, it's a sequence of decision making, all of which are really important considerations and also alternatives to the big should you go to art school problem. The flowchart is saying you should go to art school if you have a lot of money, if you have no motivation, no social skills, don't particularly do art in your free times, and also don't really know how to internet. I would argue that it wouldn't be any one of these factors, but have to be a more precise combination of all of these things that would warrant my suggestion for a good enough reason for someone to go to art school. So conversely then, if you have any of these more, soft skills, let's say, like being very self-motivated, having good social skills, enjoying doing art in your free time, and if you know how to use the internet to find stuff, it might be a good enough case for you to not go to art school. That's the gist of it, but I'd like to go through the steps from this flowchart a bit more closely and add some of my personal thoughts to each of these phases down the flow. But because I did go to art school for basically 8 years, going from between 2 different art schools and 2 separate programs, because I did hop around a lot, I feel like I may have like a deeper well of insight to draw from my personal case at least. So immediately right here, the big question and the first question to ask is how much are you paying? Because I do think a lot of it does come down to money. Because to me, not that art or making art should be about money on your way to get there, but your money also costs you time retroactively in a weird way. So this is actually a question of time. How are you paying? Do you have money for it, basically, or will you have to take out loans or rob banks and sell kidneys? If you're in a place where the tuition's okay, maybe $30,000 to $50,000 like here in Canada, that's something to consider as well. And also if it's Norway and Germany where it's free, then that's a different discussion as well, because there are no consequences for quitting that basically haunt you after the fact. The next ladder down, these blue questions are exploring this idea of how self-motivated are you? Do you need assignments and deadlines to get things done, or do you do a lot of personal projects because it's fun, because you like pushing yourself and you like testing your theories to see if you're right? This one, these green lines, I put these green lines in to show that this is an option that leads to going to art school. Now, if you can't get assignments and deadlines to work for you, or if you basically aren't self-motivated, I don't think going to school will make you more motivated. It'll make you more negatively motivated in the fact that you want to cut your losses for having paid for something, so you might as well get the most out of it. But that's not self-motivation. That's the right. You're motivated by this logical fallacy of a sunken cost fallacy, which is that you've already paid for a year or two of some program, so you might as well finish it because you've already sunk thousands of dollars. You might as well sink another $3,000 or $5,000 just to get the thing. So as I said, I don't think that if you're unmotivated, you shouldn't go to school. You should try and find something that does motivate you. It could very well be that you haven't quite found, your thing yet, or you haven't dived deep enough into one of the many things you're doing right now. So that's a matter of time and exploration, which is up to you where you want to get that. This next ladder down talks about this hypothetical situation where you're at an art event and do you not talk to anyone and you go home feeling disappointed, or do you take a little while to warm up, then you can chat with people and make some connections, or right away you're in there and you figure out who the pros are and you get to them and you get networking, and the networking works out. These are just social skills. Naturally, anyone who's in any field would be smart to be networking. This isn't really about networking. This is about just having the proper social skills and the subtle social cues in place for you to best navigate networking to make it work out for you. In this field, the green arrow for yes points to if you can't talk to people. If you have poor social skills, I don't think that alone is enough for you to warrant you going to art school, because keep in mind the transaction of money between you and this place isn't for you to get a social training program to be more personable, to be more outgoing, to be more extroverted. The transaction taking place is between your money and an art training program. So if you're not a very social person, you should go to art school. I don't think so. This whole flow layer is tough. This yellow layer right here. This is difficult because it's assuming that you need social skills to be, successful. Whereas a lot of the most technically proficient artists in your field are probably also ones that are incredibly socially awkward, because instead of spending that time to be social, to learn to be social, and to enjoy being social, that time is spent instead on art and their craft, right? And that's one of the very few trade-offs that can warrant such a disproportionate amount of a skill gap in these professionals versus everyone else, right? They're the ones that are a bit weird because they spend all their time doing this one thing, and that's why they're good. So I don't think you need social skills to be successful. Whether or not you want to be more social is another thing. And if you do want to be more social, I don't think you need to pay for school to get there. Because instead, why not focus specifically on what you want, which is to be more social? You can hire like a life coach, or go to a Toastmasters event, find a dating coach, or just, generally spend more time with friends and family, right? And start there. It would be risky, actually, to assume that your investment of an art tuition may or may not have the byproduct of making you social. Like, as I said, I've been to 2 schools for 8 years total. I've seen people who have been changed by schools. I've also seen people who come in weird and come out no better, right? Let's be honest, like in 4 years' time, you're not going to come out the same person. But still, in 4 years' time, for some people to come out not having met their expectations, that's pretty sad. I got my big point out there, which is like this level assumes that you need to be social. You need to be like an extrovert, a normal dude to be successful, and you don't. There's lots of proof of that out there. Craig Mullins, just kidding. No, he's perfect. So this next level down is another hypothetical where you have a Saturday afternoon free from work. You have free time on a Saturday, basically. Do you go to the mall, play Fortnite, go check out a gallery show, or work in your sketchbook? I kind of do like the wording of these because it pitches you a hypothetical, so it's kind of like you're playing a choose your own adventure kind of deal, where it's very much some sort of role playing. It does make you think about these situations more differently than check items on a risk assessment list, right? So if you go to the mall and you play Fortnite all day, whatever, you should go to art school. Because what this says is that this is similar in that you're not motivated, but also that maybe you're not dedicated. If you already know that you're not dedicated, you would know that this might just not be the thing for you. This purple level is basically saying that you need to be dedicated and are willing to spend free time doing stuff that's not so fun for you. That maybe is not so fun for you. Like you're willing to eat your vegetables. And it's true. I do really agree with this level. It is an important assessment whether or not you're dedicated. Are you okay spending an hour just drawing every day when you could be using that time to do other things instead? So art is one of those things where it's not quite like a low-hanging fruit, but it's a high-hanging fruit, in that your hard work comes to fruition much further and further down the line. There's a steeper learning curve to it, I feel like. There's much, it's incredibly low barrier of entry, but it's a high barrier of satisfaction. So it does require a lot of dedication and actually like blind faith in your dedication, because you don't quite know if it's working or not. That is one of the biggest struggles of a beginner, is not being able to properly, judge and assess how they're doing with improvement, right? So dedication, and that comes to you with more dedication. Everything gets significantly easier the further and further and further you get along. But that does take time. So yes, obviously be dedicated. This final level of the flowchart asks how are your internet skills? Do you know what a Twitter is, or do you only post cat pics? Or are you able to get a viral illustration going on Instagram? Or you're a hacker level internet researcher? This also, I don't think, is a huge factor of success in art per se, but could be a factor in a strange way about going to art school, because if you're really good at the internet, you'll be able to find the resources, and you know all the resources out there are free. If you're not good at the internet, I don't think that the natural thing to do is to go to art school, because they won't necessarily teach you how to be good at internet. Remember, your money is in transaction with an art training program, not quite a digital literacy program. And typically speaking, a school isn't as open to teaching the students how to learn and get an education online for free. That'd be kind of contradictory. There is an attitude of that taboo there in art schools, you will find. I would rule out going to art school to become digitally literate, whereas if you are and you're watching art videos on YouTube, you can pretty much just dive deeper and deeper and start programming and getting a really good art curriculum designed and built for yourself specifically. We've reached basically the bottom level of the flowchart, and I want to just kind of make my comment again, especially for the side of things that point to going to art school. I don't think any one separate of these things is a good enough reason to go. I think that only if you are all of these things together at once, where you have a lot of money, you're unmotivated but need to get motivated, you're not so social but you have the desire to be more social, you're undedicated and undisciplined but you have the desire to be more, and finally you're not good with the internet and you're okay staying that way. If you're the combination of all these things, then I would agree with this flowchart that says to go to art school. The flowchart lays out all of these considerations in a great order as well. They're all quite astute considerations in the education decision process. Finally, I'll talk about this piece right here, which are the alternatives for someone who is not going to art school. As I said at the beginning of the video, I think the fast answer to should you go to art school is probably not. And I feel that this chart is pretty much saying the same thing. What other alternatives are there though for someone who's not going to art school? It's funny because it says to pick 3 or more. Yeah, you have to kind of do a lot. Some of these things are very geographically dependent. My favorites out of these alternatives would have to be the ateliers, and these are like basically they're schools for the classical training in art, and the classical curriculum is the curriculum that's mostly based on realism and involves a lot of theory, but classicism works. It is a tried and true program that has been proven to produce consistent results because it's been around for so long, and it's the only curriculum that is a safe bet for working. right, in terms of getting good at art. Online classes are also a great option if you are okay with kind of being a bit more self-aware about where you'd like your art to go, because now you can properly curate a path and take a lot of shortcuts to get there. If you prefer the Cartoon Network kind of style over like more of a Magic Card, Fantasy Illustrator style, there are a lot of shortcuts to be taken for you to be incredibly successful at your specific thing, if you know what that is. So online classes are really good for that. Places like New Masters Academy do have somewhat of a classical curriculum kind of progression in their classes, so that is a pretty good option, a definitely good option for the price. Online mentorships are good but expensive. Self-studying with books and videos is great because it's basically all-encompassing for these alternatives here. They're all, I guess, they all fall under the assumption that you'll be self-motivated enough to follow through with them and to pursue and research and look into and show up on your own. And obviously art-related jobs, because you're getting literally paid to learn to do the thing, right? And this is a weird one because that is a very broad term as to what an art-related job is, so it really depends. But if you can get paid to learn some art thing, that really might be worth it. That's what I think about this should you go to art school flowchart. I really wanted to make a video about it because it is one of the best things I've seen in a long time having to deal with the art school problem. When I actually first saw this chart, it made me like feel lighter in a weird way, in that I could, from now on, I could be okay just sending someone an image now. I'd send them this flowchart. Instead of writing 3 paragraphs and having like an interview, I can just send them this, and as they make their way through all these levels of this whimsically written choose your own adventure situations, I think it's very enlightening for the viewer to realize and to consider all these things as if they were actually happening to them. So I'd be really curious as to what your thoughts are on all these considerations to the art school problem, and I'd be curious as to what you think is worth considering that's possibly been left out. Thanks for watching.